IQ Smart Parent is made possible in part by the McCune Foundation and the Grable Foundation.
On this edition of IQ Smart Parent, math matters in the digital age, and today's math classrooms are undergoing a high-tech transformation. From making in the math classroom to learning the language of computer coding, innovative teachers are finding ways to make math make sense and prepare your kids for the jobs of the future. Parents will tell you how you can be a part of the math revolution too, and you'll also meet a national expert who can unravel the controversy about common core math standards.
It's important to note that what students should learn is a different issue than how their learning is measured.
And we'll tell you how America's national pastime is making its way into mathematics education. We've got all that and more on today's edition of IQ Smart Parent, and it starts right now. Welcome to IQ Smart Parent. I'm your host, Darieth Chisholm, and today's show is all about making sure your kids get the math education they need to succeed in the digital age. Our first guest knows all about that. He is Matt Larson, a longtime educator and author, and the president of the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you.
Really glad to have you here.
Good to be here.
So let's start by painting this picture of the stereotypical math teacher, especially perhaps back in the day when I was in school. There was this thought that the teacher was always at the board writing math equations and the kids were just kind of sitting back. But in fact, when we think about today and math classes, what should they look like? And certainly that's not the case.
You're absolutely right. When most parents were in school, the way they experienced it was the teacher did the math. They watched their teacher do mathematics. Today, we want students doing mathematics under the guidance of the teacher. Where once upon a time the math classroom was pretty quiet, today there should be a lot of mathematical discussion. Students comparing and contrasting solution strategies, working on challenging problems, and learning how to do mathematics, why it works, and also learning how to apply it in different situations, unlike what their parents often did.
Lots of conversation and lots of activity in the classroom.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And this concept of math literacy, what does that mean?
That's really an important concept because when most parents were in school, they just learned how to do something. But today, the definition of mathematics literacy is multidimensional. We want students to learn how to do something, why it works, and when to apply it, while building a positive mathematics identity, that idea that students believe and see themselves as capable learners and users of mathematics. So once upon a time, the goal was just how to do it. Now it's a much broader definition of mathematics literacy.
You have published a book, Balancing the Equation, and inside of the book you talk about raising the expectation of how kids are taught and how they learn math. How so?
Well, it's really important to note that over the last 25 years, achievement in mathematics education has improved in this country, but we have a lot more work to do. And we need to raise our expectations for each and every student. Traditionally in the United States, we often group students into low, medium, and high math groups. We want to make sure all students have access to on-grade level or above curriculum. We want to make sure teachers are implementing research-informed instructional practices that might be unfamiliar to some parents, but they're aimed at making sure their students truly understand the concepts and skills so that they can go further in the curriculum and be more successful.
And just a moment about how the expectation should be raised or at least changed at home.
Absolutely. One of the things we really want to make sure parents do is be supportive of their child, encourage them. It's important to note that learning mathematics sometimes is challenging and students will make mistakes, and that's okay. Learning mathematics is no different than learning how to read or learn history. It takes the expenditure of some effort, takes practice, takes a supportive environment, and if we provide those things, each and every student can learn more mathematics just like they learn more history or science.
Yeah, and in fact you point out if parents are frustrated at home trying to teach their children math and perhaps having conversations around, oh, I was horrible in math, or I don't really like the subject, that it in fact just discourages them. They should find a way to be more liberated, if you will, in that conversation.
That's absolutely true. One of the things parents don't want to do is, oh, I was never good at math when I was in school, because that transfers that belief to students. The United States is unique. Our country, you tend to believe you're either born good at math or you're not, and that's just not the case. Each and every student can learn more mathematics. I think parents' role, for example, in homework is not necessarily to do the homework or to provide instruction, but to simply be supportive, monitor it. Ask your child, did you have homework today? How's it going? To ask their child to maybe explain how they solved the problem, so that we emphasize that math is more than just answer getting. It's also about reasoning and sense making and understanding. But I think it's really important for parents to realize the homework isn't for them. The homework is for their child, and so parents don't need to do the homework. They just need to monitor it. And if it gets to be too confusing or frustrating at home, just encourage their child to go back the next day and ask the teacher.
Yeah, and that is liberating.
Yes, it is.
Ask your teacher, I can't get this done, so
Right.
I think we should table it until you make it back to the classroom. So let's talk about Common Core math standards. This topic has seemed to stir up a little bit of controversy. Why so?
I think most of the controversy is either due to a lack of information or misinformation. Some people think the Common Core state standards are a federal initiative, and they aren't. It originated with the National Governors Association. Some people confuse the standards with assessment. It's important to note that what students should learn is a different issue than how their learning is measured. And some people confuse the standards with curriculum and instruction.
So we asked you to point out 3 tips for parents, and I
Yes.
want to quickly get to those if
Sure.
we could. And this would be as it relates to having a conversation with their math teacher about it. And you point out that you should ask, is my child expected to know essential arithmetic skills and the math concepts at the foundation of those skills? Why ask that question?
You want to make sure that your child's getting a balanced mathematics curriculum, not learning just how, but as I've said before, the how, the why, and the when. So you want to ask the teacher, are you using concrete materials in class? Are you having discussions in class? Are students expected to draw pictures? Are they discussing how they solve problems? So that we make sure that they're not learning just how to do procedures, but understand them as well.
The second question you suggest they should ask is my child solving challenging problems to learn new math ideas, concepts, and skills? Why is that question important?
We want to make sure that students are really engaged in reasoning. In real life, we have to solve problems we've never seen before. And real life problems don't come with a heading like, remember when you did one like this on page 52 in your math book. So we want to make sure students have that opportunity to engage in reasoning, maybe solve a problem that requires an extended period of time. We just don't want them to repeat things they've simply been shown in class.
And this one's pretty interesting. You point out they should ask, is my child working with other students?
Absolutely. Again, the emphasis in math class should be on reasoning and sense making. And when students work with one another, they share their strategies, they compare, they contrast, they critique them, and in the process they develop a deeper understanding. And in the real world, when we're on our jobs working with others, that's what we do. We have to work with others, we have to discuss our solution pathways and come up with a new approach.
And it sounds like that engagement with students and other students in the classroom makes it a lot more fun because they're talking about it and learning it.
Absolutely. When students are doing relevant mathematics, when they're working with others, they're much more motivated, they're engaged, and they enjoy mathematics class more.
Okay, great. Well, lots of great information. We want you to stick around because we've got more we want to talk with you about. But first, today's math classes look a lot different than you might remember. It's all about learning math concepts by applying them to experiments that are hands-on and high-tech. Right now, visit the South Fayette Township School District in Western Pennsylvania to see how it gets kids excited about math, starting in elementary school and taking it all the way through to high school graduation.
The mission of the district is really tradition, pride, and excellence.
Technology in the district is at a very exciting time right now.
We have the students more engaged than ever.
They're designing, they're thinking, they're solving problems.
See if it works.
We're working as a team because nobody can do it by themselves.
STEAM is an acronym for Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Math. It's not just a science class, it's not just a technology class, it really integrates all subject areas into one.
We're intent on building a STEAM curriculum that includes computational thinking, the design and engineering process, and the human-centered design thinking. We've built this continuous thread that moves throughout the curriculum.
Our first graders are working with Little Bit, which is a magnetic circuitry kit.
I really like this technology because you get to make stuff out of it, and it's like it comes out really cool at the end.
Our students are also doing Scratch.
Scratch is an iPad app from the MIT Media Lab, and what it is it teaches students the early basics of computer programming.
We want kids to learn to think. We want kids to learn to problem solve, and that's happening.
Today my students were working on their Rube Goldberg machines. They had to think about the angle at which their different parts and pieces fit together.
The way our STEAM studio is set up is that they explore and they learn on their own, and as teachers we're just facilitators.
In 7th grade they're using App Inventor to create their own smartphone apps or apps for tablets.
I decided to make a basketball trivia app. It could do internet texting and normal texting, so it allowed you to ask your friends the questions that you didn't understand.
At the high school, our students have been engaged in project-based learning.
We are doing the Global Passport Project, and basically what that is when students from different high schools pair with companies such as Alcasan. They work with them to help get problems solved.
So it's not about learning content, it's about being able to learn, what do I do with that?
We decided we would target our project towards the elderly population and revamp a traditional walker.
We developed a lighting system. We also have the panic alert system. A third leg would help offer extra stability.
My role is to help the district develop the innovators of tomorrow.
I'm project manager of a product that we're working on called Bus Buddy. It's a product that allows parents to monitor their children while getting on or off the bus.
My Edudex is an electronic flashcards program that allows students and teachers to create their own deck of flashcards and assign them to a group of people.
Untapped potentials within all of us. We as a district need to continue to introduce new technologies so that we can untap from the vast minds of children all those unlimited possibilities.
They really are the innovators of tomorrow.
Those kids we just met were using math skills to mastermind new creations. We're going to focus on that same concept, but now we're taking it digital. Matt Larson of the National Council for Teachers of Mathematics is still with us, and we're very happy to be joined by Megan Ciccone, a representative of Code.org, a national nonprofit dedicated to expanding access to computer science education. Welcome.
Thank you.
So let's start with you talking about coding. What is it?
So code is essentially a language, and there are coding languages like Python, Java, block-based languages that little kids can use like Scratch, and coding is basically taking a language and using it to direct a computer. And so humans write code, code directs computers, and computers power our society.
And as it relates to our conversation about math, since that's what we've been talking mostly about, how is it related or why is it important?
Well, we often refer to these mathematical practices and computational thinking, and that is really an underlying practice of coding. And so when we talk about why it's important not only because it helps to infuse math into additional subject areas and into our world, but also simply the ubiquitous nature of computers. Computers are everywhere. And so when we look at our world, we can either have a world that is understood by students and where learning empowers them to positively impact that world, or one that's intimidating. And that's really, that statement cannot be overstated. We want children and youth to be empowered to positively impact the world around them, which is computational.
You know, it's interesting. I read a report about, job market report, that talks about computer programming and coding really being significant in almost every industry, and not just typically people, I think they think of technology. And so I guess it begs the question, should parents, should everyone really be thinking about getting prepared in the job market in general as it relates to computer science?
The answer is Absolutely and profoundly, yes. I mean, we can look at statistics where 71% of new STEM jobs are actually in computing, or the fact that computer science graduates make 40% more than their counterparts, or that there are 500,000 open computing jobs right now in the United States. We can also look at it as the cool factor. I mean, these jobs are in the entertainment field. Who doesn't want to be a Disney Imagineer? Or they're in the healthcare field. Who wouldn't want their child to be the one who creates a new invention that self-monitors and could save someone's life? And because of the ubiquity, it's in every single field, in every industry, and there are just so many opportunities.
So let's talk a little bit about your nonprofit organization, Code.org. It launched in 2013, and so what are the goals and how is that, how are you fulfilling that?
Yes, so I'm a facilitator for Code.org for their CS Fundamentals course, but Code.org itself is, exactly as you say, a nonprofit, and it's dedicated to increasing access to computer science for all students. And really, the mission is every student in every school should have an opportunity to learn computer science. And when we look at every student, we really have to identify the fact that there is a huge disparity in terms of gender, in terms of students of color, and in terms of students that come from poorer areas. And this disparity and the lack of equity and access to computer science, we're talking about 45, 47, and 49% of students in those subcategories that don't have access to it. And so both Hadi and Ali Partovi, the founders of Code.org, are looking at that, and in every single session and every piece of curricula that you experience, every professional development, that is a strand.
How are you changing that though, and through the organization?
So first and foremost, it's really about tracking and data and exposing teachers. And so we're offering professional development in really strategic ways. And so we're making sure that not only are we giving professional development to teachers that teach at-risk populations, but we're also supporting them with free online curricula, free actual packets that come to their school with materials for unplugged resources and activities. And so that targeted approach is important.
Matt, I want to bring you back in and talk a little bit about if you believe that teaching coding is more of an add-on, or is it a discipline that can be integrated into the math classroom?
I think that's an issue that school districts all across the country are dealing with right now. We certainly support coding and computer science. Mathematics, mathematical reasoning are foundational to student success in computer science. But computer science and mathematics are each their own discipline. And so I think it's important that schools dedicate time to coding and dedicate time to computer science instruction. It is certainly true that computer science can support mathematics learning goals, but we don't want to do anything in school that would detract from student success in mathematics itself.
And so how do you feel about the integration though? I mean, is that
I would prefer that coding and computer science had its own time versus integration. Sometimes when you integrate things, it's much more challenging than it seems it might be on the surface, and we tend to then not do as good a job with either one as we would if we dedicated specific instructional time to it.
Megan, how do you feel about that?
I think that Code.org and I would both agree the fact that computer science deserves its own time. Absolutely. When you look at the courses that are available, they are full courses. And because it is foundational, you can see pieces whenever we start to look at project-based learning or other project opportunities where they can be infused together, but they should be standalone as well so that we have the dedicated time to both of these skills.
We asked Matt earlier about his 3 tips. You've got 2 you want to share.
Well, I think one of the tips that I wanted to make sure people knew about is that coding and computational thinking does not require screen time. And so in many cases with young children, we can be interacting in activities on a day-to-day basis. For instance, if we're teaching algorithms, right, and we happen to be cooking with our child that day or in the garden planting, we can use that step-by-step sequencing to also tether it back to this coding idea where that step-by-step is basically an algorithm. Or even a littler one. I have a 3-year-old. She can blindfold me and walk me through an obstacle course to get to a ball, and that step-by-step sequencing as well is really part of that computational thinking and coding. And then the final suggestion would be simply to go online and to look at options where you can provide and create opportunities for your child to code for free.
Okay, well, those are great tips. We appreciate it. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. And up next, we're going to tell you about a unique way to get kids excited about math by linking it to sports. But up first, take a look at an innovative program that promotes STEM skills by pairing little kids with tech-savvy teens.
Gravity is what keeps us on the ground and not make us float in the air like we're in space. So when we're throwing the airplane, gravity is what wants the airplane to hit the ground. I am a tech warrior. A tech warrior is somebody that teaches younger children how to be interested in technology and STEM in general. We work with the kids on conducting experiments and thinking like scientists.
Ready? We hire teams of color to work with children primarily of color, to have teenagers that look like them, to be able to provide that extra mentoring and instruction for them is really a wonderful opportunity, both for our high schoolers, but also for our elementary.
See that?
Okay. It's about impacting their lives and their career choices, but also providing those early seeds for the elementary children.
I'm learning new things every day, and they're learning new things every day too.
Our final guest today is Betsy Stein of the Boys and Girls Clubs of Western Pennsylvania. Betsy, welcome to IQ Smart Parent.
Thank you for having me.
Glad you're here.
Thank you.
So your program you run teaches math to kids by using sports. It's called Fantasy Baseball. How does that work?
Well, the Fantasy Baseball program allows students to take the statistics from the back of a baseball card or from online and make player probability wheels so that they can play simulated baseball games against each other and have fun while doing it.
Yeah. So it's an after-school program. How long does it run, and how do kids get involved? Tell me more about that.
We do run it. The program is designed to be 42 one-hour sessions. It takes about 10 weeks to complete at our Boys and Girls Clubs, and we do it in an after-school setting that anyone can participate in.
That's great. So anyone can come in and
yes.
take it. Yeah, well, certainly that would be great. And so it's informal in terms of the activity, but what are the math skills that kids are actually learning?
Kids can learn anything from operations like adding and subtracting all the way up to higher levels of mathematics like data analysis and probability and proof and reasoning. They go from, they take the raw data and figure out missing data and then are able to actually create probability wheels for each.
So why is sports a good entry point to get kids interested in math?
Well, everyone loves sports. In some way, shape, or form, whether it's watching sports or talking about it. And our kids love talking to each other about it, and we use this program to get the kids involved, and they don't even realize what the level of mathematics that they are doing with this program. They just know they're having fun with their friends, talking about the Pirates, talking about other teams that they like, talking about baseball.
It's a great way and a good example of how math is used in the real world.
Absolutely.
And to get the kids talking about it.
Yes.
And really having fun. Yeah, so what's the energy like when in the classroom? How involved are the kids? And
they are so energetic. We have a hard time finishing the program out at the end of the day because they all just want to be there and they want to play with their friends. They have no idea that they're learning all of these mathematics concepts. They are playing and they are having a great time, and the smiles are always on their faces.
How do parents maybe integrate some of this at home, and can they, so that they really support what they're learning there?
You can do anything as simple as, figuring out what you think your favorite player might hit next. Using those statistics to figure out, at their next at bat, if they're hitting 200, are they likely to hit a single or a home run? Just even having that conversation with your children at home is a great way to get your kids involved and doing math without really even realizing it.
Yeah, that's the great part about it, like data analysis without them even knowing that's what's going on.
Right,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So your program was funded by the Pirates Charities, which is a nonprofit associated with the Pittsburgh Pirates, Major League Baseball. You actually do a Fantasy Baseball World Series. You brought along a few photos, so we do want to share those with you. But tell us, taking a look at these pictures, just describe what happens at this Baseball World Series.
Pirates Charities invites all of the winners from your site or your classroom to come down and compete in a World Series championship at PNC Park. They have an announcer that's there that's announcing the games. They do a round robin tournament to determine league winners, and then they also then compete in a elimination bracket to get an actual winner for our World Series event. The kids are so involved, and the level of sportsmanship that you see at this event is amazing to see. The kids are all cheering for each other, kids that they've never met, and it's just, the sports just really brings them all together in an exciting atmosphere.
Yeah, and so as we're wrapping up, just share with me your final thoughts about how parents can really get their kids involved with understanding and loving math by using sports.
Parents can do anything with sports, just even talking to their kids about the records that their that the team might have, talking about their favorite player and what their favorite player has been doing. And you can even take your favorite player statistics and create a player wheel for them as well if you want.
Yeah, and we've got some resources on our website, so that's a good way for parents, if they've got questions about it, they can certainly utilize that and or contact you all.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great. Good. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for
appreciate
having me.
that. Yes, certainly. Kids need 21st century skills to thrive. Math has gotten a bad rap for a long time, too long. And we hope that today's guests have gotten you fired up and ready to dive into exciting math activities the entire family will love. Thanks so much for being here, and join us again next time for more IQ Smart Parent.
Want to learn more about IQ Smart Parent? Visit us online at iqsmartparent.org for more episodes and additional tools and resources. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest to share your thoughts on being a 21st century parent. IQ Smart Parent is made possible in part by the McCune Foundation and the Grable Foundation.